Persuasion. Why study persuasion? Well, we begin this unit by studying how people persuade others to do something. Why on earth should we study this? You need to know how to persuade others to meet sales goals, to get dates, to not have to do all the chores, or to get hired, etc. You also need to know how to recognize when someone may be using a persuasion technique unethically to take advantage of you. Believe it or not, people are motivated by just three things. Every way to motivate someone can fit into one of these three categories. Let's start off with the first and easiest one here: fear. It works best to get an immediate change in other people's behavior. It'll work for you too. And we know that there are different kinds of fear. There's the fear of something being taken away, fear of losing something. It can change your behavior. An example from childhood might be fear of being grounded. And an example from now would be a fine for speeding. Your behavior will absolutely change when you see those officers pull in behind you. Suddenly, you start driving exactly like you did in driver's ed. Perfectly. We also know from psychology that you can have a fear of something unpleasant being added, and it will change your behavior. From childhood, you may have had something added like a spanking or even just extra chores. And from now, you can do something and a ticket could be added, community service, or a bad grade in a class. So you may think that fear would be the most powerful motivator, and it kind of works. But it only works as long as what is feared is seen as close. Only if it is imminent does fear really work. If it's far away, we tend to blow off those dangers. As an example, your parents probably taught you not to use bad language out in public. Then most kids at some point decided to test that rule. But first, before they said the bad word, they glanced around to make sure that their parent that feared something wasn't around. Only then did the kid say the bad word. And now there's many adults walking around without any fear at all of saying those words. The fear is no longer there. So when you won't obey due to fear, then that motivation method is lost to the one who was instilling the fear. What are you going to do now? How would you motivate someone when they no longer fear the one who is giving out the punishments? Back to our driving experiences. When you see that police officer in your rearview mirror, we talked about how you suddenly change your driving habits back to driver's ed style. But the second that officer isn't behind you anymore, and the fear of a ticket is gone, you're back to driving with your knees while talking on the phone and eating a cheeseburger or whatever unsafe thing you're doing. Once the fear is gone, it's no longer a motivator. And we've got research that shows richer people don't fear those fines in traffic as much as poorer people because the impact of that fine is not a hardship. Take a moment to read a portion of this New York Times article where speeding in Finland can cost a fortune if you already have one. Can you imagine that? $58,000 for traveling 64 miles an hour in a 50-mile-an-hour zone. That probably got his attention. As much as possibly, say, a $200 fine would get yours. Now let's move on to the second method of persuasion: desire. You want something you don't currently have, or want to maintain something you do have. This works to get someone started on an action or belief. It's not a long-term motivator or an immediate motivator. It's kind of the meh of motivation. Desire is based on the thrill the brain experiences at the moment the achievement of a goal is met. It's dopamine, your brain's favorite hormone. A longing for that good feeling of dopamine is in your DNA. Babies from 1 to 3 months don't really know how to control any of their muscles. They are constantly surprised at that hand thing that keeps floating around them. Many seem genuinely surprised when a thumb lands in the mouth, and they are equally surprised when it mysteriously disappears. When babies start to gain muscle control, their parents praise them with smiles and cuddles and higher pitched voices. Baby brains then make dopamine. They desire this good brain feeling and do the trick again, and thus patty cake is mastered. You like to reach goals, and you'll get a dopamine boost too. But here's the drawback. It's only when you really focus on what you desire will desire work to motivate you for any length of time. The instant that something else takes over as the I want that more than the original desired thing is no longer very motivating. Many people who start a weightlifting program are fired up on day one. They absolutely know they will be ripped soon, and the trainer or the DVD program you bought talks about how wonderful your results will be. So you go for it. So exciting. Day 2, a bit sore, but you expected it. Pain is weakness leaving the body kind of mentality. Day 3, when you really get hit by the pain of all that lifting, lactose buildup in the muscles, etc. And suddenly many people find themselves desiring to not hurt so much. That's more desirable than getting ripped. So you skip a workout. By the way, you are the best liar to yourself. Unfortunately, you also believe all the nonsense lies you tell yourself. For example, you missed a morning workout. So lie number 1, I'll hit the gym at lunch. Lie number 2, at lunch. I'll go right after dinner. Lie number 3, at dinner. Well, I'm going to hit it extra hard tomorrow. You should know you're not going to do that because the immediate desire to not hurt so much is stronger than that far off desire to be ripped. Now let's talk about dieting and how it works there. We want to eat for our health, a long-term desire, but we also want a treat like ice cream, a short-term desire. We then convince ourselves that a little bit won't impact the long-term goal, and we believe our lying selves again, etc., etc., etc. See, to make desire work even in the medium term, you'd have to have frequent or almost constant reminders of your goal. That's why people put up pictures of themselves as they used to look, or hang up those jeans they want to get back into. Then, the problem is we stop seeing the pictures or the jeans because we just acclimate to them, and it honestly just doesn't register anymore. It's just the normal scenery. So what does work? Obligation. If you haven't figured out by now, humans are social creatures, and we feel a responsibility to our tribe members. We know, like at the DNA level know, that we must all work together as a unit to reach success. Obligation is the adult in your brain that just told a buddy you can't go out yet because you need to clean the house. Many of us almost turned around to see how our mom snuck into our apartment when those words came out. Would you? So how can you get someone to parent themselves willingly so that they do something they don't really want to do and when there's not a threat? And then you get them to keep on doing it even when no one is watching. Hint, it's obligation. Let me give you an example. As you probably know, heart disease is the #1 killer of Americans. It also includes that fear of death thing. It can be pretty strong. Heart attacks hurt, and fear of pain is a big motivator. It will get people to change. Some heart attack patients are lucky enough to make it to the hospital and have open heart surgery. Their ribs are cut. The surgeon does a bypass. This means they literally cut your ribs, spread them out with a rib spreader, real term, sorry for the gross image, to reroute the vessels so your heart won't die. This also really hurts. Have you ever bruised a rib, broken a rib? Every single breath is a reminder of the painful event. Ribs heal in about 8 weeks. So after a heart surgery, doctors will send patients home with basic guidelines. Stop smoking, eat healthy, exercise, take your medications. Basically saying, do this and you will live. Don't do it and you will die. So why on earth do such a high percentage of heart attack survivors stop doing these things within 3 months of the heart attack? At first the pain motivates them, and the desire to live motivates them. And then the lies start. One little bowl of ice cream won't matter. And then the ribs are healed, so really? Does it matter? One little bowl? So here's what research discovered. Here's how to make a patient, in this case let's call him Ed, follow the rules. First, we get Ethel, his wife, to tearfully tell him how she is dependent on him for all of their marriage, how she doesn't even know how to work the new lawnmower, how she can't blah, 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 blah. And then get Edwina, his daughter, to tearfully talk about how devastated she will be if he is not there to walk her down the aisle, how she's dreamed of walking down the aisle with him since childhood, and if he wasn't there, then the whole event would just be a pointless ceremony. Maybe we could get Eddie, his grandchild and namesake, to tell him, Pop, Pop, you are the only one who teaches me to fish. Dad doesn't have the time, and he said he'd never even want to go hunting. You said you'd teach me and take me hunting. If you don't follow doctor's orders, I'll never learn. I'll never be a man like you when I grow up. You're my hero, Pop Pop. So, is it ethical? It does sound something like an intervention, though, doesn't it? But if we knew that this approach really produces significant results in terms of patient compliance with the rules
and they live longer, well, you have to decide the ethics issue. So would it work? Are you motivated by fear, desire, obligation? The truth is you're motivated by all three. And it really helps to understand which methods work under which circumstances, and to recognize when someone may be trying to motivate you with fear or desire or obligation.
There are 3 reasons that people do shit.